today's webinar, all about creating meaningful digital experiences. So many of you gave some really useful feedback about what you might want to include in this, but a lot of it was really focused on individual channels. So we won't be focusing on specific channels like PPC or TikTok, for instance. It's more about bringing methodology to life so that you have the right approach to every single channel. We'll talk about what success is in a digital space, how you can measure it, and how you can bring that to life in a really, really meaningful way. Thanks, Stuart. My video is patchy. Hopefully you can still hear me. I think hopefully what I'm saying is the most important thing. But any more issues about audio or video, please let us know. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Pete. So, hello.
Good morning. Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming today, guys. My name's Pete Taylor. I'm Director of Optimisation here at the Student Room. I was part of the original startup team at TSR, so that's almost about 17 years ago now. Besides that, why am I here talking to you guys today? Well, as Director of Optimisation, I ought to know how to give really good digital experience online, but also I am co-founder of something called Brighton CRO, which is a conversion rate optimization meetup that happens down here in Brighton. On top of that, over 500 hours of user testing experience and thousands of A/B split tests. And really at the Student Room, I champion all things UX. So hopefully I can give you guys some good information today.
Absolutely. I definitely refer to Pete as a guru or a wizard. So yeah, I'm sure you'll learn absolutely loads today.
Definitely got the beard for it.
Many of you guys know me. Anyway, so yeah, my name is Lorna. I'm the Education Account Director here at the Student Room. I've worked in youth marketing for a really long time and used to work at a university as well. So I know many of you don't work at universities, but there certainly is a focus around kind of that university experience. This will cover all markets for everybody, nevertheless. And yeah, if you ever want to have a chat with me afterwards, I'm always around. And my whole job really at the Student Room is to make sure you guys are all looked after. So yeah, let me know. So just thought we would cover initially what we're going to be covering today. So first off, we kind of covered this already, but we'll be talking about what digital success is. So I'll hand over to Pete shortly about really kind of what that means and how you can kind of put that into practice. We'll also talk about optimal user journeys and measuring that. So thinking about the things that you should be measuring and also maybe should not, and where kind of your focus should be. Pete's also got some really fantastic case studies around getting to really good user experience. So part of that is user testing, and part of that is around using focus groups and ways you can do things in a really low tech way, and then taking everything we've learned and then bring that experience to life online for students, which is more important than ever. And then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways, just so that you have a good kind of armor to take away back to your work and make it really, really effective for you. So we talked a bit about kind of why Pete and I are here, and obviously Pete's got buckets of experience and lots to talk about. But I think in terms of why us at the Student Room are the right people to talk to you guys about this. So, you know, we have more than 8 million users a month spending time on the Student Room. And so when it comes to digital experiences, we think that we're pretty good. Not to say the site is the most beautiful site in the world, but we're clearly getting something really, really right time after time after time. I think the other really important thing, and the reason that we're talking to you about this particularly now, is that we've been asking students regularly how they're feeling, what's impacting them. Now that's a really massive focus for us all the time. But certainly now, well, we're all in a really kind of big state of crisis. So from that polling, we found almost 16% of respondents, kind of students, were really lacking in purpose or routine, and that's really impacting their mental health. And that's because they can't do their normal experiences kind of outside, and that's why digital becomes so important. And then we see also, you know, 50% of students really want to hear about virtual open days and virtual campus tours. They really want to take normal experiences they may have in their real life and have those online. And of course also things around things like guest lectures, webinars, live streaming. They are so keen to have really good experiences online that have meaning and fill their lives with a bit more purpose and structure, that we think it's just a really kind of good time to talk to you guys about this now, to give you loads and loads of tools to make your experiences super successful. And Hayley, yes, absolutely. So the slides will be available on the resources pages, and this is also being recorded at the moment, so we'll send those around later for sure. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Pete to talk about what digital success is.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lorna. So what is digital success? I guess for me, it's what does digital success really look like? So without wasting any time at all, can we move on to the next slide, Lorna? Fantastic. Right, so this is my youngest daughter, Willow. It's the occasion of her 13th birthday. So why am I showing you a picture of Willow on her 13th birthday? Well, this to me is exactly what digital success looks like. Look at the facial expression. There's just pure joy and excitement. So a few things to note. It's a birthday, so presents are expected. Willow's a girl, so we've got pink foil glittery wrapping paper. Also, I'd say Willow's been looking at this present for a while now and knows it's coming. But it's the content that's causing the reaction. So the more eagle-eyed of you will have seen that this is a shredder. Yes, a paper shredder. Now, Willow isn't your average 13-year-old girl. She has a rare condition called Prader-Willi syndrome and also has an autism diagnosis. Now, I know Willow. My wife knows Willow. And even though she had just opened a Lego Hogwarts, bearing in mind that Willow loves Lego and also loves Harry Potter, this was her reaction to the shredder, not Lego Hogwarts. You see, the shredder, it was the gift that she wasn't expecting. It was really the ultimate birthday user experience. To me, it was success. Now, I'm not telling you to stick a delighter behind every experience on your site. I'm certainly not suggesting you buy a shredder for 13-year-old girls. However, when you come to planning the design and designing digital experiences, ask yourself 3 questions. So, next point, please. What problem are you trying to solve? Who are you solving that problem for? And most importantly, what is your end goal? Fantastic. Thank you, Lorna. Can we move on to the next slide? So we're going to show you a couple of examples here of really great digital experiences. So the first one, please, Lorna. Okay, so this will be really familiar to a lot of you. Netflix came onto our screens in the UK in 2012. Actually, they've been a company in the US since 1997, selling and renting DVDs. And I've, like most of, well, certainly I didn't think when they came in 2012 that they were ever going to take over Love Film. And the fact that they came to the UK market with just streaming, not DVDs, my gosh, it's going to fall on its face. As we know, it didn't. And one of the things that Netflix did really well was they came to the UK market and launched with free trials. They were so confident of their product that they gave it away for free for a whole month. The full service, absolutely free. The ultimate, in my opinion, of positive user experience. One thing I'd like to make you aware of is that actually free trials ceased in the UK in December 2019. And that is an interesting point in itself, but one that we're not going to cover right now. So I love this page. This is the guest view. It's no distractions on the page. There was a single point of focus. If you were the page's primary purpose. And if you work at the student room, you will know fully well how much I bang on about primary purposes of pages. It assumes you want to sign in. Registration is very much secondary, very secondary. And that is completely on purpose because everyone has Netflix, right? The clever thing here is that Netflix also knows that most of us never sign out of our account. Yet this page is designed for guests, yet it leads with sign in. What Netflix is saying is it's so popular, everyone has this. What, we don't have Netflix? The background also shows films and Netflix original series we've all heard of. Whether we've watched them or not, we all know that Netflix has some of the best films, certainly has the best original documentary films and series. And generally, if you look at that background, there's something that you might want to watch there. So what I'm saying is, not only has Netflix created a clever landing page, but they also know their audience. They know how to hook us in, sign us up, and keep us there. To be fair, I could talk about Netflix pretty much all day. Just this page alone, we could have an entire session on. But you get the picture. So let's leave that one for now and over to Lorna.
When we were putting these slides together, Pete and I also talked about mine and my partner's two different profiles. We watch really similar things, and yet Netflix have very different imagery for either of us. I think clearly know so much about us, even to those little nuances. Another really great digital experience is very different, I think, from Netflix. Netflix is this enormous multinational behemoth of a business, which is, essential for life at the moment, I think. But bringing it a little bit kind of lower tech, I do think a really, really fantastic digital experience that we've hopefully all experienced over the last few weeks is moving from just standard FaceTime or to use just video chats to something that is a bit more structured. I think once we all went into lockdown, that FaceTime chat, particularly with bigger family groups, bigger friendship groups, I'm sure you've all experienced this. It gets very loud very quickly. Grandparents speaking over top of other people, nieces and nephews blaring in the background, or sometimes up front and singing very loudly in the case of my own niece. So I think what's happened is a really clear, easy, understandable proliferation of a format that we already know that allows for really good social engagement, provides structure, has a time and a place for people to talk, and that's quizzes. Now, how many of you have been joining quizzes on Zoom or some other kind of group platform whilst in lockdown? Work it in the chat if you've been in there. I have literally 3 regular quizzes every single week with different sets of friends and family, and it makes it so much easier. So this is a really low tech, really easy, really clear way of engaging and interacting in this lockdown, where you're taking something that's low tech but just elevating it slightly to optimize your time together. So the problem we're trying to solve is kind of talking to one another in a constructive way and spending time together meaningfully. It's all kind of your friends and family. That's the who. And ultimately, the end goal is to just have that good time together. The quiz online is such a good example of that, and super low tech, which is handy. So we've had 2 really, really good experiences, and also 2 experiences that I think we've all had ourselves, which I think, that scale is also testament to the success of them. But I think it's also worth just touching on a bad experience. So Pete, talk to us about your bad experience.
Great. Okay, so the next slide I'm going to show you is probably going to shock a few of you. This is a very well-known multinational brand, and on the whole, they have a very good web experience. So, as you can see, Nike has loaded up. An iconic brand that rose during the 80s and 90s, becoming synonymous really with the sport of basketball. Now, I love trainers. I've really enjoyed the comeback of many classic lines of trainers. The greatest for me has been the return of Nike's Air Force One, shown on the page here. But to be fair, they've all been a little bit bland. I like my colourful trainers. I like to have something that's kind of, shouts out a little bit garish. So, imagine my delight at finding this out. Nike Air Force One is by you, and then seeing this little symbol. Next one, please, Lorna. So, you're telling me that Nike are going to let me customize my own pair of Air Force One. I was pretty impressed with that. So, can we have the next slide, Lorna? So, I set to work designing my very own pair of Air Force One. You can absolutely every element of the shoe can be customized, even down to the stitching on the back. So underneath Nike, I had my initials PT and 1 and PT and 2 on the back of my very own pair. Now, to bear in mind, you do have to pay for this service. It's about £40 more expensive than a off-the-shelf pair of Air Force Ones, but you know, if you love your trainers and you want a really colourful pair of an iconic design, then if you're like me, that's money well spent. So I invested some more of my time. Can I have the next slide, please, Lorna? And got to a point where I was quite happy with the design of trainers that I come up with. So I clicked done. I chose my size, and I was just about to pay for them, and I noticed this on the next page. So next, please. Sold out. That's odd. I've just designed these. These are my pair of trainers. They've got my initials on the back. How can they be sold out? I've only just finished designing them. It must be me. It must be the colours that I've chosen. Something's out of stock. Or tell you what, let's go at it again. So, next one, please, Lorna. So I went at it again. Now you can see that actually I went at it a few times. Actually, I went at it a lot more than is showing there. I ended up creating a lot of pairs of Air Force Ones. But it was always the same experience. And I just couldn't work out why. How can it be sold out? So I'm going to be honest with you. Adidas also do retro high tops from the 80s in a great range of colours, and they're only about 60 quid. So I was sold. End of story. But not quite. In going back to grab screens and torture myself a little bit further for this particular presentation, I made a discovery. Can we have the next slide? So I scrolled down, and this is important, below the fold of the page. And the first thing I read is, this product is currently unavailable. Really? So it's sold out, and the first message that is given to me below the fold is, this product is currently unavailable. Well, I mean, come on, Nike, this is a really poor experience. I've spent quite a long time, I've invested a lot of time in creating these trainers. Actually, what Nike wants us to do is quite clever, in a way, is share our designs. However, and I want to share it across the social channels, but what's more important to me as a customer is that this product is actually available. There is simply a daily limit on custom footwear. So if Nike had led with this message, put it above the fold of the page, made a big deal over the scarcity, and come back early tomorrow to stand a chance of getting your custom pair of Air Force Ones, I would have been hooked, and I would have made the sale. Over to you, Bob.
I think also that kind of scarcity, they could charge probably even more. It kind of validates the price point in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they could have made a big thing out of this, and they could have placed it sensibly on the page. And they've really, I'm shocked at how poor that experience is.
Yeah. It's definitely missed the mark a little bit. So in terms of what digital success is, I guess we've kind of talked about just going back to basics and those three key questions that Pete talked through. So what problem are you solving? Who is it for? And ultimately, what's your end goal? As marketers, our end goal is really, really important. And sometimes we start there, but actually that should be the last point at which we come to. Really importantly. Other thing to think about really is that considering ways that you might be able to bring a free trial experience to the audience. Certainly in education, this can be really, really tough. Can you provide 2 weeks free of the degree? Probably not. Doesn't really work that way. But there are loads of parts of the experience of being a student or being a young person, integrating and engaging with your brand that will be able to bring it to life. And that might be putting students in front of societies or lecturers or other students. And certainly online, there's loads of ways of going about that. And to Pete's story in particular, just make sure the experience matches the expectations. So Willow's experience for her birthday exceeded her expectation. It was one of those things that she didn't expect, and it was full of delight for it. And then the complete opposite, Pete with the trainers. You think you're making a shoe that you can take away and it's not an issue, just like normal trainers. And then not only is it sold out, but there's a daily limit, and that wasn't made clear. So if you're going to have an experience that doesn't quite match your expectation, make sure it's elevating it, not a disappointing one. And finally, just again to Pete's point here, just making sure that all of that most important information and salient information is above the fold. If it's like a surprise and a delightful surprise, absolutely, like that can be part of that journey, and the surprise and delight can come later. If it's going to make a massive difference to that experience in the first instance, it has to be above the fold. Which leads us really well on to optimal user journeys online.
Okay, so we're going to look at kind of what are optimal user journeys online, what do they look like, and how do we get there? So, an optimal user journey starts with the user. The funny thing is that it also ends with the user. And that bit in the middle, yeah, it's also your user. It's their engagement with their experience that is key to the success or failure of the digital experience you create within your own website. So, Lorna, over to you.
So my background is really all kind of universities. So this example is focused on universities, but taking that focus on the kind of on the user and their journey and their experience, you know, beginning, middle, and end. It's a really obvious one to start thinking about the funnel. I know the funnel is a bit of kind of a bit of an outdated way of thinking about moving your user through their journey with you, and certainly it's not linear. There's no linear experience for a young person choosing their university. They dip in, they dip out, absolutely. But of course, there are still phases that we should think about, and the funnel serves a kind of a really useful tool and visual in that regard. So what I see in my kind of biggest experience with many universities and businesses more generally is that there's a huge focus on that top of the funnel, which is absolutely essential. Of course, you need lots and lots of high volume, low intent people to be aware of you, to visit your website, to look at your social pages, to see you on comparison sites, you know, whether you're your university or whether you're also, you know, buying trainers and comparing. I'm looking for a new pair of running trainers, and I've been through so many blogs looking at all these different trainers. And so, you know, you can be exposed to you and your brand in lots of different ways in that high funnel place. And there's also lots of low funnel, high intent users, but this is small volume. So, you know, we start with that high volume, low intent, lots of people engaging with you everywhere, which may be not on your website. And then small volume, high intent users, they're thinking about the open days and apply now. And most of your campaigns are either focused on that really, really high volume or really, really low volume, high intent user base. And there's something really missing in the middle there. And those bits in the middle are the things where they can engage with you, take part in things on your site and learn more about you. So things like I guess to Pete's example, whilst it's a bad experience, being able to design your own shoes, spending time on Nike's site. Other things where you can quizzes or surveys on a site for you to learn more about it. One example of this might be, so there's a skincare brand called The Ordinary. You can tell the system a bit more about you to learn more about your skin. And that's you know, that doesn't mean to say that you're really, really high intent to buy The Ordinary products, but it's a really good value exchange for you to learn more about yourself and to ultimately encourage you down that funnel. It's not a big ask for you, but you get a lot in return. There's not going to be loads and loads of people doing that, but it's not really quite as small as that group that buy. And it's just those next stages to filter you down the funnel. I think that's a really, really big focus there, to make sure that you're engaging people, not just at that point of general discovery, but also helping them kind of filter down that funnel to wanting to spend a whole day with you, wanting to bring their friends and family to you, wanting to apply and spend 30 grand or more on education with you. So I think there's a real opportunity here, particularly whilst we're talking about digital experiences and digital events, to focus on that mid-volume, mid-intent, where you can provide an experience online. I think at that point it's worth just talking a little bit about myth busting in terms of the ways that you can measure some of these bits and what's really important to have a look at there.
Okay, so time to bust a few myths. Okay, first myth to bust. Okay, so page views do not indicate positive or negative digital experience. So what do I mean? Well, say user X views 20 pages on your website. Did that user view 20 pages because they landed on what they were looking for, were so impressed and received great signposting that they navigated onto more content on your site and had a great experience and was repeated several times? Or did they view 20 pages because they didn't quite get what they were looking for, but stumbled across a link at the bottom of the page that looked like it was right, but ultimately wasn't, but they felt they were kind of in the right place, so used your internal search, got no meaningful results, stumbled through a few more pages, ultimately leaving your site feeling frustrated and let down? Okay, so second myth. Time on site does not indicate positive or negative digital experience. Now, I expect you're beginning to see a pattern or suspect a pattern here. Yes, as with the point above and the example above, time spent on your site really doesn't tell us much about the user's experience. What they were there for were they there for a long time because they couldn't find what they were sure should be there? Or did they not spend much time on your site because they immediately got exactly what they were looking for? And just to make sure you're getting the point and noting the pattern, bounce rate does not indicate positive or negative digital experience either. Is your bounce rate high because your organic rankings are so badass that your user lands exactly on the content they needed, consumed it in 30 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever, and went directly back to Google search? Or is your bounce rate low because users land on the page expecting something they don't get, try one more page just to be sure before going back to Google? As you can see, traditional quantitative data on its own doesn't really tell us much. Okay, next slide, please. So, one final myth to bust. Next bit, please. They don't have to stay on your site forever. In fact, they also don't have to start their positive experience with your brand on your site either. Really, it's all about the impact on your brand of a positive experience. So, let me give you an example. At the student room, we do a ton of user testing. In fact, we are lucky enough to have our own lab, but that's probably a whole session in itself. A few years back, I was running a session on our site around our on-site uni guides. In that, I watched users land on the page telling me what they were looking for, noting the brief bit on accommodation, and university saying, well, it's things like distance from campus, catered or not, weekly costs, shared bathrooms, etc., that I'm really interested in. Then their delight as they clicked on the link that took them directly to the university's own website, landing them on the exact page that gave them all that information. And them turning around and saying, well, you couldn't have had all that information on the page on TSR anyway, could you? Yet they had a very positive experience of TSR and the university site. So another little story to reinforce what I'm saying here. Again, during user testing sessions, at the beginning, I always ask the participant whether they've heard of the student room or not. The vast majority of the time they say yes, and then I ask them how they know this, and I get universally the same story time after time. I searched for, actually, no, they didn't. What they say is, I searched up education question X, the student room came top in Google search. I went there, got what I needed, went back to Google. Now, the user does that once, not really taking much in, except the right answer to that question. But a week later, they do it again, and the same thing repeats again and again, and probably a few more times, until suddenly the magic happens, and they, without realizing it, have a very positive brand image of the student, because every time they drop into the site, they're getting exactly what they came there for. Okay, so next slide, please. So that's all well and good, but how do you actually measure this stuff? And how do you measure positive digital experiences? Okay, so I will give a nod to traditional quantitative data. I know, I did say it doesn't tell you anything, positive or negative, on its own. There may be a what, but there is no why in that information. However, combine it with qualitative data, what your users are actually saying, doing, feeling, and it suddenly becomes a lot more powerful. Qualitative measurement is key to understanding your audience and, in turn, delivering meaningful digital experiences. At the Student Room, we use all of these techniques that I've listed here to help our understanding of our audience. Surveys and market research, in fact, is something that we believe in so much that we now have a dedicated market research arm to TSR Insight. User testing is something that we have done for a very long time. I alluded to how we have our own lab earlier. You don't actually need one. We use lookback.io these days. It's a relatively inexpensive tool, but there are heaps of ways that you can also do user testing for free as well. Again, all of this is a session in itself, but if you're really interested and want to know more, please do get in contact with me. And finally, interviews. We tag these onto the end of our user testing sessions, and we have 5 standard questions that we ask each and every time. As an example, one of those questions is, as a student or young person, what is your biggest pain point in your day-to-day life? So it turns out that 2 things dominate the answers: time management and public transport. Actually, they make real sense when you start to think about it. But it's only in asking these questions that we really allow ourselves as a company to be innovative, not always going in the direction that we initially thought at the beginning of the session. So an interview allows you to be innovative. User testing allows you to really understand what your audience wants. Surveys and market research just help bring your initial ideas to life, and focus groups can be a great way of taking a product and making sure that it's fit for your marketplace. So I'm going to move on and give you 2 examples, 2 case studies, one around user testing and one around focus groups that we've done recently at the Student Room. So the first one is user testing. Some of you may know that TSR acquired Which Uni Guide towards the latter part of last year. We knew the content and the concepts and the on-site tools were really good, but we didn't know much about what the actual user experience or preferred site journeys would be. So we decided to run some user testing sessions. We have the next slide, please, Lorna. So, during our user testing sessions, we generally see 7 or 8 students. It's optimal for seeing repeat patterns, but it also fills up the day nicely as well, giving about an hour to each session. Unless there is a reason not to, i.e. a specific requirement to run all the sessions on one device, then we alternate between a desktop session, see the image on the left, and a mobile session, see the image on the right. The session starts with a basic task, and we observe the user trying to complete that task, being careful not to talk too much ourselves, which is an issue for me, but constantly encouraging the participant to think out loud. Now, during this specific session, we unearthed a number of usability issues that are currently being worked on at the Student Room. Predominantly, though, we saw the importance of the different data sets on the page, with visual representation of data being really well received. Blocks of text not being well received. And as I said, some top secret usability issues which we are currently working our way through. Predominantly though, this session allowed us to marry the quantitative data we knew with the qualitative data of the user's experience, likes, dislikes, stumbling blocks, and delighters, so we could plan a path forward for the future of this site. Okay, so that's our first case study. Second case study, please, Lorna. Okay, so this one is looking at focus groups. Can we have the next? Actually, no, not just yet. So, back in the tail end of 2019, as our team were planning for the new year, our development team were given a full sprint to develop and take to market a product of their choice. This is really unusual at the Student Room. Generally, we have this sort of stuff planned in advance, but there was a full sprint, and we decided to hand it over to the production team. Predominantly, actually, this was used as an opportunity to try a completely different development system, but was a great opportunity to develop something that could potentially have a lot of worth to TSR in the future. So now it's time for the next slide. Thank you, Lorna. Sorry. So the team decided to develop a new profile page. Now, actually, a slimmed down version of this page is currently being tested and released to our audience on TSR now, with great success. For the first time, we are seeing users freely update data about themselves, as they really see the advantage of the data being present across these pages, both in their experience of other users' profile pages and other users' experience of their profile page, allowing them to connect with like-minded and similarly goaled users, enhancing that overall experience of TSR. Now, we've always had profile pages on TSR, but they were hard to navigate and had no real data power, and predominantly weren't used by our audience. This new version is seeing more engagement and is more central and is more central to the use and the user experience than we were expecting. And to date, is setting ourselves up for a great future product, central potentially to the experience of TSR. So did we just stumble across this design? Did we decide what the features were going to be and how they were going to work? Absolutely not. We know that no matter how great we think our ideas are and how on point we think our products could be, we aren't our end user. So, next slide, please. We decided to run a focus group. We invited 6 students, three girls and 3 boys, from 3 different colleges across Brighton, studying a range of subjects, and we got them in for a focus group session. Each student was given a blank mobile phone. Well, actually, it was an A2 sheet of card with a mobile phone drawn in it, and a stash of potential features, icons, and symbols for the page. A key thing here is we didn't tell them what any of these were or how they were supposed to work. We then set them the task of building their own page. However, before we got to this point, we had been chatting with the participants and asking them questions that they discussed as a group. And one key piece of information we gathered from them was that they weren't that interested in their own profile page once it had been set up, but they were very interested in other people's profile pages. So we quickly pivoted the session, printed out a second pack of icons and stuff for each user, turned over their cardboard and quickly drew a new mobile phone on it. Their task now was to create on one side what they wanted their profile page to look like, and on the reverse, what they wanted other people's to look like. They all simultaneously got on with creating, no conferring. At the end, we went round each participant and they talked us through their design, explaining the features and, more importantly, each feature's functionality, how it actually worked. What was amazing really in this was the similarity in the different participants' features and functionality. If we could have the next click, please. In fact, some of the functionality of a feature was different to what we had thought and actually became part of the end product. So the success so far, we're still rolling this out with A/B split tests on features and functionality of this product, was down to listening to our audience and building from there, rather than building from our own preconceived ideas of what it should be. Okay, so next slide, please, Lorna. So the key takeaways to this section. You do this bit, Lorna, is this me?
We can both do it if you would like.
You go for it, you go for it.
So yeah, recapping on everything Pete's talked about. So thinking about that user journey, starts, ends, and all the way through, it's all about the user. It's all about them, whether they're a prospective student or somebody that wants to buy your product or take it for your bank account. That user is the most important person. We're trying to solve problems for them. The second point is historical quantitative data. So quantitative data is always historical. It's always looking back at what's happened in the past. And not to say that is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but it can be misleading because the future changes. If we were looking at the data on the student room for this time last year, we'd be thinking, wow, there's going to be absolutely loads of people in the study help part of the site. And actually, it's not, because exams have been cancelled and the context changes. So having a look at that data is maybe a good place to start asking questions, but ultimately, skipping forward to point 4, integrating that qualitative approach to data and an assessment to see what success is really powerful to make decisions for the future. Kind of on that point though, users do not have to stay on your site forever, and this is also where maybe that quantitative piece is really difficult, because you really can't measure what people are doing when they're not on your site. They also, you know, the experience about you, with you, everywhere they are on the internet, in the world, informs their experience of you when they come to your site, because it informs what they're expecting. Exactly like Pete said, you know, for us, it should be that we you know, send students to your site or to other sites if that's what is going to be most useful and most relevant for them. We shouldn't have to feel that we need to keep them on our site forever. And then just the last point, so testing doesn't have to cost a fortune. So of course there are really, really big, expensive testing solutions out there, but it can be, there are really simple free A/B testing programs out there, but also you can go back to basics. Obviously at the moment, the kind of focus group we just talked about might be very difficult, because pens and paper, you might have to send packs out to people, but it can be really low tech, it can be really low cost. And again, you don't have to have huge amounts of people to do this. You know, certainly 6 to 10 students doing a focus group or having an interview will give you lots and lots of information around seeing patterns through that will enable you to make decisions for the future.
It's also worth saying that when you see something in user testing, or you see something in a focus group session, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a statistically significant piece of information. But what you can do is take it as a starting point, as an idea of something that you can actually put into testing on your own site, where you can gather statistically significant data on whether that's an improvement or not.
Absolutely. So at this point, we're going to talk about bringing those experiences to life. So didn't want to provide you with solutions for every single thing, because all of you are going to have slightly different audiences and slightly different goals yourself. But let me just take stock a little bit about where we are and what we just talked about in relation to what we're about to talk about now. So ultimately, the user is central. We're talking about students, young people. They're the most important thing. Understanding what they need and the problems they are trying to solve is really, really essential. And that's why we started, really, about what they're looking for. So, you know, Pete also talked about these students being really poor at time management. The whole situation now, really, they're feeling a loss of purpose, a loss of routine. And so that's where we should start, absolutely. And so how can we bring that kind of experiences to life around combining the problems we're trying to solve for young people, but also matching that with what your goals are. So on the student room, we have one really fantastic tool of doing this, and this is TSR talks or guest lectures. So this is an example. Again, you'll have this later. So there's lots of text. Don't feel that you need to read all of this text, but ultimately it's about putting the academic in the hands of the students. So we also talked about free trials. How can you give experiences to your users that give them something that brings the experience of university to life for them? So something like TSR talks or guest lectures is a really fantastic way of going about it. So ultimately, this is in a space that they understand and recognise. So they're on the student room. They also understand the premise of a TSR talk. It's a bit like TED Talks, but this is more interactive. You know, you're taking a really big topical idea. Should Banksy be put in prison? We actually ran this after he'd done the Christie's thing, and the result here was more than 100 replies, almost 2,000 page views, and also a poll in which 1,700 people responded. So not only is this super useful, super relevant, it also really highlights the University of Hertfordshire's senior lecturer Claudia Carr and their subject of criminology and law, but doing so in a really, really meaningful way, giving students an opportunity to think about big ideas, but in the context of something that they really recognise. So we're taking the familiar, unfamiliar platform, but elevating it. And that's a really good experience, because that's what university is. It's about finding new ways to think about the world and yourself. And so the other way to think about bringing things to life is really leveraging what's available to you. You don't necessarily have to go out and create loads of new things. There's loads and loads at your fingertips already. I think the first amazing resource are really enthusiastic PhD candidates and your fantastic student ambassadors. One of the biggest things I miss about working at university is working with ambassadors. They are so motivated, so enthusiastic, so eager to help, and have so many amazing ideas. Find out from them what they think they should be doing, how they should talk to students. Do focus groups with those guys about what they would have liked or would like now. But also put them in front of those students. You know, give them the tools to just go and talk to your audience. They are amazing. I think it's also to say, you know, we don't just have to rely on academics. people that are, students are at university now, whether they're PhDs, master's students or undergraduate students, are a step ahead of the prospective students we're trying to talk to. Another key piece here is interactive learning tools. So I imagine many of you have a Zoom account as part of your university. Maybe it's Zoom, maybe it's another platform. But all these platforms actually have loads of really clever ways for you to be able to interact on video calls or webinars, such things like whiteboards and polling and loads of different little tools there that enable you to play games and make the experience online really, really interactive. I think the key point here as well is that, particularly for universities, colleges, or if you're talking to students more generally, their next step is absolutely education. And it may not be the case that the degree in and of itself is their end goal. It might be a career, it might be the social life, but ultimately they know they're coming to spend 3 or 4 years of their life studying and learning with you. So center around learning tools, center around discovery and learning. Another point that I kind of talked about already is around using familiar formats on different platforms. So students are expecting lectures, they're expecting workshops, they're expecting seminars when they come to university with you eventually. They know that that's happening, they know that's on the way, but it doesn't have to be in a lecture hall. This can be on Zoom, this can be on TikTok. You could do a bite-sized lecture on TikTok. You can do a TSR talk on a platform that they spend so much of their time on at the moment. You can do the same on Zoom, you can do the same on Facebook Lives. Take familiar formats in one space and bring it to a familiar platform that they are used to already. And mixing those things together will provide a really great experience. And this final point is around providing a true value exchange. And this can be in lots of ways. So yeah, Netflix provided a true value exchange by giving you something for free, which you loved and filled up your time, and then you took it on. And yeah, I'm a paying member of Netflix. I have been for many, many years. But also there's kind of smaller things. So the university I used to work at, we actually did, we took some really interesting data that we gathered as part of a really big profiling project and converted that into a quiz in which it helped that user understand what they really wanted out of university. We rolled it out as a beta, on a beta basis, just to understand a bit more about it. And at the end, there was a little chat box for them to let us know how they felt about it and what they'd taken away from it. And so many students were thanking us for helping them understand what they were really motivated by and what they really wanted out of university. And that's essential, that's fantastic. Of course, that's the kind of experience you want. We get their data by them filling out this fun quiz. They ultimately learn something more about themselves. That's another example of a way that you can create something really, really engaging that provides a real value exchange, which isn't just giving something for free. So just a few ideas of ways you can bring everything we've talked about today to life, which starts with trying to understand what your users really need and working back from there. So just key takeaways on that point, three really simple ones. So firstly, bring learning to life. We're talking about universities, colleges, or just students more generally. They're coming to you to learn for 4 years. Whether it's about a career or their social life, it doesn't really matter. They're going to be spending 4 years learning with you, and that can be a really, really easy and clear focus. Create opportunities for interaction. So this can be a Q&A, this can be live streaming on Facebook, this can be TSR talks, or just using your official rep on site by not just answering a question, but opening the question back up. Maybe on the student room, your rep is answering questions about accommodation, but let's learn more about that person. Let's give them and invite them into a space to continue that conversation and invite them to interact with you more. And of course, within that, use the student room to its full advantage. The students are spending so much more time than ever on the student room, and this is the time to talk to them there and talk to them wherever they are. So we've kind of come to the end of the main bulk of what we've talked about. So I think it's just, there's been lots and lots of key takeaways throughout. So we're just going to end by smushing them all together to leave you with really 4 key things that are going to be most relevant for you. So the first one, which is Pete's point. Just go back to basics and consider those 3 questions. First off, what problem are you solving? Second, who are you solving it for? And finally, what is your end goal? Don't start with your end goal, start with the user. Make them the center of everything you do. Another really key point from Pete here, don't rely on quantitative data only. Google Analytics is a really, really good tool in lots of ways, but you need to make sure that is integrated with qualitative data. It's not just the what, it's often the why, and that's what will lead you to really good decisions for the future, and also will enable you to be really innovative, exactly like what Pete talked about in terms of asking students what's important to them and what's the big barrier for them. How can we solve how can we solve the issue about public transport, and how can we solve the issue about poor time management? You know, you ask your users the same question. What's in their way? What do they need from you? Consider the whole journey as well. You know, I kind of think about, I mentioned at the start that many of you had asked for advice and ideas for specific channels. And of course, you have to leverage every single channel in the right way, but they don't live in isolation. You know, when out of home comes back, a billboard does not live in isolation to your Facebook campaign or to the way you're talking to students on the site. This is a whole landscape, and everything needs to work harmoniously. So in terms of the journey with you, it doesn't have to start on your site. It can start on the student room. It can start on Google somewhere else. It can start on Facebook. That's absolutely fine. As long as when they come to your site and they have a great time with you, that they leave feeling fantastic because you've given them what they needed.
I think it's really important point to add to that as well, Lorna, is one of the things that we've seen over the years is that students see Google as the internet. Their generation, very rarely do they see your website as a complete entity of its own. They just see Google as the internet, and each time they interact with your brand, whether it's on your site, whether it's on a social media site, wherever it is, that is just an interaction with your brand. They're not really putting that into that's this website, so I'm going to get that experience, and that's this website. What you need to do is have a holistic approach to your brand and your audience's interaction with your brand. Sorry, Lorna, back over.
No, you're totally right, 100%. And then just that final point, which kind of it reflects on kind of bringing experiences to life. So just providing more and more reasons for your students to spend time with you. Again, want to add more reasons in that middle of funnel to come back to you, to engage with you, and to spend time with you. And I think, you know, like Pete said, in terms of that dwell time does not necessarily mean kind of success or not success. You know, multiple page views doesn't mean that that's really successful or not. But also, if you give somebody an opportunity to spend half an hour with you, so you can build a relationship with them, so they can have an emotional relationship with you as an institution, as a brand, as a person, that is absolutely what's going to make the difference for them, sure. So we've had a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Just going to pause for a second. Any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We've got a couple now, which I'm going to post straight to Pete. These are really, really good questions, actually. So yeah, put them in. So first off, Kelly, thank you so much for your question. So Kelly asks, do you tend to incentivize UX and focus group participants?
The really quick and easy answer to that is yes, we do. So why is that so important? Well, the audience that we get in generally, predominantly for our user testing and for our focus group sessions are the decision-making years. So kind of we have a lot of year 12 and year 13 students who are currently in college and planning on going to university. That's a really important part of the experience of TSR. So a lot of our testing is within that audience. They're not the most reliable people in the world. And if you're running a user testing session, the expense of the rooms that you've got booked out and the equipment and the people to observe and the moderator, suddenly if someone doesn't show for a session, for an hour session, that's quite a lot of money spent with no return. So what we tend to find is that we incentivize a student of that age. They're going to be in doing the user testing for probably about 40 minutes. We always block out an hour, so we've got 20 minutes for me to talk to the team that are observing just to see how it's going, debrief, all of that sort of thing. But they're going to be in with us for probably about 40 minutes. So what we do is we offer them a £20 cash incentive, and that to year 12 and 13s is a serious incentive. On top of that, though, we found that recruiting, we actually have students within different colleges around Brighton that do the recruiting for us. And that is a much more successful way of getting students to turn up as well, because they are incentivized for recruiting and incentivized if someone actually turns up as well. So there's two layers of our incentivization, but yes, we do incentivize, just so as we don't waste that hour of time more than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. We've got some really fantastic more questions that I'm going to go through. So the first question is from Sarah. So what's the general feeling from students about online learning being a strong possibility for universities in September? So I will speak to Marissa after this and send you guys a link to a conversation that's cropped up this week. So I think this kind of relates to that bigger conversation around deferrals. So I think over the last few weeks, there's been loads of surveys going out, where, including us, we polled students, and 15% of students were saying they were planning to defer. There were many that were much higher than that, from other sources. What was really interesting, we weren't seeing that conversation at all on the site. The conversation about deferrals didn't crop up until just a matter of weeks ago. Their primary focus was about the thing that was in front of them immediately. The thing that was in front of them immediately was exams. Once they were cancelled, there was a whole freak out about how that was going to work. And it's only really now that these students are really realising what the impact might be for them when it comes to September. So in relation to online learning, it's a really, really mixed bag. I think that many students are kind of resigned to the idea that that might be the case. So the next conversation for them really is, is it worth it? Do they want to spend £9,000 where one semester may well be online and they're not getting the full experience? And certainly some students may not be able to use all the facilities. It's a really big consideration, but there are loads of things in that conversation that are really interesting, and a lot of sobering thoughts. So big consideration for them is, actually, if I don't go to university, even if I have to learn online, it's not ideal. Of course, it's not ideal necessarily when you've got a lab or working with animals, etc. But what am I going to do? There's going to be no jobs. I can't go on a gap year. What will I do instead? And so I think that's probably going to be a big deciding factor there. There are some students that are like, I cannot learn online. It's been terrible. But for many, many students, they realise that it's probably going to be the best option for them. It's not ideal, and there may be massive calls for reduced fees. But for students that really can't do much, probably not going to be able to get those part-time jobs that they may normally have done, university is going to be the best option. And I think in terms of that online learning experience, a little bit what we talked about today, I guess I'm thinking also about, all of the courses that normally only have 8 hours of guided time a week, where students may normally have kind of try to structure their time more through the libraries. I guess it's finding ways to support those students to make sure their time is filled properly, because that's where I feel concerned about things like mental health. I hope that helped answer your question, Sarah. Nadia, so glad that you came. Thank you so much. I really hope you found it useful. So Nadia asks, how long would you recommend a quiz? 5 questions. So I guess I'm thinking about 2 quizzes here. We've got the pub style quiz. It could be, an amazing physics PhD candidate. 30 minutes, something fun once a week that students can come into that are really interested in that topic and can't wait to start with you. A great way to interact with students that they may interact with in the future. A potential PhD candidate could be their future lecturer, and maybe teaching them anyway. So that's kind of a nice way to do it on that kind of more pub quiz style. But in terms of quiz, so Nadia, I guess you probably know about the quiz I'm talking about. So the quiz we ended up with was 17 questions, which was lots of debate around whether it was too long, but actually students really liked it, and in the feedback they actually asked for more questions because they wanted a more in-depth answer. I think the numbers of questions in a quiz really comes back to the value they're going to get out of it. If a quiz is 50 questions long and they find out the whole life story and their future forever, amazing. But also, if it's just going to be fun, 10 questions is absolutely fine. 5-10 questions. So I think, the level of effort they have to put in versus the level they have to get out is going to be relevant there. Another question for you, Pete. So have you created a more in-depth session on the measuring of the user's digital experience? That's from an anonymous person. So I'm just going to repeat that. Have you created a more in-depth session on the measuring of the user's digital experience?
So I'm interpreting that as, do I have something that I can send you that gives you a lot more detail on the things that I've spoken about today? In relation to what we've spoken about specifically here, no, but through running Brighton CRO, I have a huge amount of talks that I've done in the past, that other people have done, that look more at the in-depth way that we measure these things. Also, if you want to learn more about any of the things that we've spoken about today, if you get in contact with the team at TSR, they can pass that over to me, and I'd be more than happy to kind of talk to you directly or answer your questions directly. So, bit of a weird answer, I guess. Yes, I kind of do. I also have a lot stored in my head, and I'm more than happy to share that.
Awesome. I think so. That question was from an anonymous attendee. If that was you, please let us know who you were. Just if you send us a message in the webinar chat, just to panelists, or email hello@thestudentroom.com, then we'll certainly see what we can share with you. Sure. Awesome, thank you so much, anonymous attendee. We've got 2 more questions. So the next question is from Jeremy. In this lockdown, have you organised online focus groups? Would the dynamics change compared to a physical session? And would that affect the findings?
That's a fantastic question, Jeremy. To answer it, well, we haven't actually run a focus group, but we have run user testing sessions. One of the great things about the tool that we use called lookback.io is that you can do a moderated session remotely. So I could be sat here in this little window here, and I have the screen over here that the student is actually working on. The student, I can also see what the student's doing. They're sat in their own environment. I'm sat in my house. We're having a conversation like this, and they're doing the user testing session. I'm able to observe what they're doing, and they're talking to me. What I tend to find actually is that yes, the dynamics do change, but the dynamics change to a positive. So they are much more relaxed in their own environment. I tend to find that their conversation is much more freely coming. So they talk about what they're seeing, what they're thinking about, but they've got this complete kind of safety net of, well, they're in their front room or their kitchen at home. They're not in the lab. They're not sat next to a man 2 or 3 times their age whose beard's a little bit too unruly, and they don't really want to be sat next to him. They're in their own environment. They're being much more candid, and so actually, I found thus far that the findings have been a lot better. In fact, the 2 screenshots that I showed you earlier on in the session were from a lockdown user testing session that we ran. So that was actually during this period of time. Luckily, we have a lot of people that have been through our door for user testing over the years. So actually, recruiting students wasn't a problem. Actually, they all had a fair amount of free time and were quite happy to do it with us. So yes, we have, and yes, the dynamics do change, but I think for the better. And I think our findings are probably a little bit more robust. Having said that, everything still goes into testing.
Awesome. I really hope that answered your question. I think that was very, very comprehensive. Thanks so much, Pete. We're just going to answer 2 more questions. Oh, there's quite a lot more questions in here. So I'll try to answer these more succinctly, the ones I can answer. So the next question from Stuart. So in order to combat the deferrals, would you suggest that universities look to find ways to innovate the ways for students to learn remotely? Oh, that's a really, really big question. I guess maybe I can just give kind of a quick answer for myself, and Pete, if you've got anything else to add, any wisdom, it'd be great to hear from you as well. So I guess my first point would be, I think whenever you say the word innovate or innovation, you're suddenly, your mind goes really far in the future to things that we've never done before, and it's really exciting. And innovation doesn't have to be that. Because of this unusual situation, there's going to be natural innovation. It's going to happen regardless. I guess my focus really would be for us trying to make sure where possible that learning is interactive as possible. That we're doing a webinar in a couple of weeks actually around, or in a month's time, around building digital communities. And I think that might be a really, really relevant one to come along to, because the big thing that's missing, the thing that people, I think the thing I'm missing maybe from work, and I think maybe you and I feel the same way about this, is that like organic osmosis where you just bump into each other in the hallway or in the kitchen making coffee, and you learn from each other just in that process. And that's what's missing. So if you can find ways to make it super interactive and create reasons for the students to talk to one another and to talk to the academics, that's going to be really, really powerful. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it's necessity, isn't it? And so necessity forces us to think innovatively. But as Lorna says, that doesn't have to be brand new things. In fact, we are going through ways of delivering video content and better ways for you guys to reach our audience at the moment. But what we're not doing is reinventing the wheel in doing this. We're going very light and coming up with really innovative ways of using tools and things that we already have at our disposal, that we already know really well, but different ways of using them. So it's a necessity, and it's causing us to innovate, but that innovation doesn't have to be new stuff the whole time. It's just a different way of delivering it, but it's going to be expected, and students are going to be learning remotely.
Yeah, So I think we'll just answer two more questions then. So the first one we're going to get to is Becky. This was asked a little while ago. So how would you recommend getting mature students more involved in digital activity? They have other life commitments such as children and jobs, so it's a challenge to know what content they really want to see.
Well, tell you what, should I start with this?
Yeah,
And
go for it.
Lorna, you kind of fill in. I mean, it's the same with really any digital experience. If you start by looking at your end user, talking to your end user, finding out exactly what it is that they want. And so it's really interesting. Like my mum many years ago kind of asked me, what do I do as a job? And I was like, well, people pay me for me to ask their users why they use their website. And it is that simple. You do just need to talk to people, find out what it is. What are the pain points? Is it the fact that actually, they need to also have their toddler in the room at the time, and so there's a problem there, or whatever it is. But we need to understand what it is that our users want in order to find the best solutions for helping them. So it's really a case of asking them and talking to them. I would say actually, I have children in the house at the moment, some of them really old, some of them really little, some of them with all sorts of different needs requirements. And it's all about working out what's best for me and my family. And I can only do that by talking to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also, again, at the moment, and I think with mature students more generally, there's loads of considerations for these groups. And, if mature students are a really big part of your cohort and really important to you, as they well should be, and I really hope we see a big resurgence of mature students and part-time learners on the way, which would be fantastic. But just as an example, there's lots of people I'm working with at the moment who are doing lots of childcare, and so just to chat about their campaigns, we're talking at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. I think for me, that's something I'm really, really happy to do. It may be more difficult to have academics, ambassadors, etc., being happy to kind of run sessions online later on, where the kids are in bed, or early in the morning where the kids aren't awake yet. So I guess all mature students are going to be doing so many different things. They're going to be taking care of elderly parents. They're going to be looking after their kids, and so all those things are going to be very, very erratic. Potentially just acknowledging that life is tough at the moment is a really good way of going about that, just so that they build trust in you before they even talk to you. I think trust is super important in that regard. Okay, one final question, which is a follow-up from Jeremy, actually. So Jeremy was the person that asked about online focus groups as opposed to in-person focus groups. So straight to you, Pete, last question. Do you think that a focus group should be run by our ambassadors instead of older staff members so that prospects can relate more?
That's a great question. I don't think so, really. It's about creating an environment. It's about creating a rapport with the people that you're talking to, one where they're happy to talk to you. They feel comfortable in the environment that you create for them. Certainly, sometimes there is benefit in kind of having younger people maybe as part of the session, but also, we have to remember that we're running this session for a reason. Those answers and things that we want to find out. And really, the best way to do that is to be present within that session. As long as we make that environment a nice environment for the participants to be in, as long as we, I always start my sessions or my user testing sessions with things, just making sure that people realise that we're not testing you, we're testing the website. So there's no such thing as right or wrong answers today. All that sort of stuff really helps kind of put people at ease. I also have a set of questions in the user testing session that I ask right at the beginning of the session. I'm often accused in the student room of like, well, what possible benefit is that to us? And they're designed to get the participant thinking, but also answering different types of questions. And as we do that, I ask them kind of a question that's really easy to answer, one that they've got to kind of do a little bit of computation to answer, and then one opinion piece and one piece about their likes, basically. And by the end of that, actually, they're really happy to talk to me because they've gone through this whole kind of series of different ways of thinking and different ways of talking back at me. So I think there's ways that you can relax people and get them into the session, and then it doesn't really matter how old and grey you are.
So true. We've come to the end. Thank you all so much for joining. Like 50 of you have stayed right to the end as we ran massively over, but I think those questions were so useful, so insightful. And yeah, again, Pete, really good to hear your views on those things and how to address them all. So thank you, Pete, in particular for putting all of this together. So grateful. I learnt loads in the process. I hope all of you have attended have enjoyed it as well and got a lot out of it.